Okay, so Miss Mary Hartney, tell us who you were with and when did you start with them?
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Brenda. So I am president of the Florida Fertilizer and Agrochemical Association, and I started with them back in the summer of 1998 and was hired to take over the lead for the association, which represents the fertilizer and pesticide and ag biotech companies doing business in Florida.
Oh wow, and how did you get into that?
It was just one of those being at the right place at the right time. It was just fabulous. I had been working in the ag communications world for about 12 years, and the position came open when Andy Levine, who was my predecessor, was hired to become the Florida Citrus Mutual Executive VP. And so the position came open, I interviewed, and I was selected.
And you were with Mutual prior to that though?
So I got my start in ag communications with Florida Citrus Mutual. And this was after I had been covering the citrus and phosphate industries as a reporter for the Ledger.
I'd forgotten about the Ledger, that's
Yep,
right.
and so that had been my introduction, and it was such a vast comparison between the reporting world and the agricultural world. And I just fell in love with agriculture when I started covering it. And so the opportunity came open at Mutual, and I took it, and that was the start of a career that has just fulfilled me and enriched my life and that of my friends and my family.
You've been very lucky for us to have you. I will say that. I've known you for a long time now.
Well, it's been fun because then, things seem to come around in cycles. So the association was founded in 1932. It was originally created by 11 fertilizer companies, and they came together to create an organization called the Florida Agricultural Research Institute.
Okay.
And so it was FARI. And it was created to do the kind of research to demonstrate efficacy and efficiency and what works and what doesn't. And then in the late 1930s, early 1940s, they included pesticide companies in their mix. And then at that time, it was being managed by Frank Holland, who was a former Polk County Extension director and happened to be the brother of Florida Governor Spessard Holland.
Oh my gosh! Now, was that the same Holland with the Citrus magazine?
No,
okay.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Not that I know of. And so over the years, the organization had invested in research, and I found some references in the old minutes. I mean, back on the onion skins, so you had to turn them so carefully, that the organization, FARI, Florida Agricultural Research Institute, was one of the original donors of 40 acres of land that became one of the first citrus grove experiments out at Lake Alfred at the CREC. So it's a reference in the minutes. I never found anything that had a property deed or anything like that to it, but it was just like, wow, they were involved from the beginning. And the emphasis on research morphed in the 80s, into an advocacy organization. Okay. And it was at that time that they rebranded themselves as the Florida Fertilizer and Agrochemical Association, so FFAA. So since the 1980s, the organization still represents the interests of fertilizer and pesticide companies, but we do it in front of audiences, whether it's a local garden club or a Rotary club talking about the industry, or going up to Tallahassee or before a water management district talking about for our nutrient stewardship and how fertilizers are necessary to grow the food and fiber and foliage that we all need and enjoy. And then also we work closely with many organizations on the state and national levels so that we represent the member interests both in Tallahassee and in Washington, D.C.
Okay. Now, how has the resurgence, or maybe not resurgence, but the organic movement, how has that affected your industry?
It really has not had the impact that you would think, because we embrace the organic products. Right. And the members of the association have product lines that are OMRI and organically. And so the only time that there has been a slight disconnect is when we hear people disparage non-organic products, because our position is that there's a place and you use the right tool in the toolbox for the situation. So we advocate keeping all the tools in the toolbox.
Great, I like to hear that. So you've had a lot of well, especially starting with Frank Holland. I mean, that's a very auspicious beginning. So
yes.
Who were some of the other names that we might know of going through the years that have made an impact on your organization?
So I am not as up on my early history years because there is a lot of time between 1932
Oh, yeah.
and up into the 1960s, 70s, and 80s. But within recent memory, you have people like Edgar Davis, who founded Florida Fertilizer Company and Inc. and was a principal in Nitram, which was the nitrogen production facility in Tampa. You had people like Jim Beller with Florida Favorite Fertilizer. You Conrad Hardy with Likes, and then eventually you have people just on the pesticide side, like Dr. Mel Kyle, who had worked for companies for decades and was just fascinating in his representation of pesticide and worker safety and being able to use those products effectively in the field. And just so many great people. And then in recent memory, you have Dennis Wedgeworth with Wedgeworth's
Oh,
Inc.
absolutely, yes.
Yes, and you have Joe Hodges with the years that he was with Douglas and his partner in Douglas, Spencer Douglas, and just people who had great passion for the industry. And I think of Hap Carson with Chemical Dynamics. He founded that company. He had worked with Perry Sparkman, who's also somebody in the industry. But there were people at key points in the association's history that were there and able to work on behalf of the industry to promote the, good public policy based on sound science.
Absolutely. So in terms of the hurdles that you have to jump through with EPA, how hard has that made it for your industry?
Incredibly difficult, particularly in more recent times when they have, post-COVID, been understaffed. And so we've seen great delays in the time it takes to get products registered for use here in Florida. And I wish more people knew just how long of a process it is to take an active ingredient from the lab to the field. It takes more than a decade, and the cost to go through all of the testing, both on the environment, on the agronomics, on the people with health of workers and anybody else who might have access to the material and be using it. It's an incredibly intensive regulatory process that costs upwards of $200 million.
Oh my gosh.
And something like only 1 in 10,000 active ingredients makes it from the beginning to the end. So I wish more people had confidence in the process and knew how rigorous it was, and that they can take great comfort in knowing that the products approved according to label use are safe to use.
And that's the key point, according to label use.
Yes.
I know we get blamed for a lot of the pesticides, runoff and everything, especially living in Florida with all the golf courses and agriculture, contaminating the water. Is that an issue that you have to fight constantly?
It is definitely one of the number one priorities for the association. So what we want to make sure people know is that everybody has a piece of this issue, piece of this problem. When I was born in Florida, there were 5.5 million people living here. There's over 22.5 million people now, so we all have an impact on the environment. Within the agricultural world, one of the things that we stress is the stewardship activities of the growers.
Right.
It makes no sense for a grower to do anything to their property that is going to devalue that property or the product produced on that. So we talk about the ways that we manage both the application of the fertilizer, the timing, the rate, the source of the material, because not all fertilizers are the same and not all of the plant needs are the same. So we work on making sure people know that there's a nutrient stewardship program called the 4 R's, and it's the right source of nutrients at the right rate, at the right place, at the right time. And because we're working with the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, they're suggesting a 5th R, which is the right irrigation. Because the water is, and your water management makes a big difference on whether those nutrients get into the plant the way you want them to.
Absorbed correctly, yes. So that's interesting. I like that. So in terms of your mentors, who has been probably most impactful on your life? I think I know who you're going to say, but I want to hear who it is.
So my start in agriculture included working for Bobby McCowan when he was the executive VP for Florida Citrus Mutual. And his dedication to the citrus industry was one of the most inspiring things that I had seen. He was a tireless worker, probably would be called a workaholic.
Yes,
So
yes, he would.
he kind of set the bar on just how you bring your passion for an industry to an association, and how hard you have to work to keep your members connected, and then also have that communication with elected officials. And then my experiences with Farm Bureau, working at the Polk County Farm Bureau, gave me the introduction to how effectively organize grassroots and to utilize the relationships your members have locally, because all politics is local.
Right.
And so that was a tremendous learning experience, and they do such good work in mentoring upcoming rising leaders that I give great big kudos and shout outs to Farm Bureau for their professional development program.
Now, how long were you with them?
So I was with Polk County Farm Bureau for 4 years.
Okay.
And then that was when I transitioned over to FFAA. And huge shout out to Jim Beller, who was my very first board chairman, was instrumental in the selection process that led to me being hired there. And one thing that most people don't know is the association is a small staff, 2 people. And it happened that at the time I was taking the job, both Andy had left and his assistant had left. So it was 2 brand new people in the association. So no institutional history with the organization on how they like to do things and what they wanted to do, and not a great deal of knowledge of the industry members. I knew some, but not many.
Right.
So Jim was just perfect. He was there to make sure that we succeeded. He let us try new things. We weren't necessarily bound by history or tradition because we didn't have it. And so he really was great in working with us to make sure that we got off to a great start. And that kind of leadership has continued throughout the association. I mean, I've worked with wonderful people. I mentioned Mel Kyle, and I've had Joe Hodges, and Joe actually was working with Andy. Bill Sally, Conrad Hardy, David Carson, who continued the legacy at Chemical Dynamics, which is now into its 3rd generation.
Is it really? Tell us a little bit about that one, because
So-
I love the family histories on some of these.
Yes, so
and it's so hard to find. I don't know about any of the agricultural people.
So Hap Carson founded Chemical Dynamics.
Okay.
It specializes in liquid fertilizers, and they're based out of Plant City. And so they're in the heart of strawberry production, and they have worked so hard over the years to provide that kind of agronomic crop consulting to their grower customers. And David Carson is Hap's son, and
Okay.
he is president of Chemical Dynamics now, and he has brought back, and his 2 sons have come back to the family operations.
Oh,
So
how nice.
now you have Nathan and Ben Carson actively engaged on a daily basis with running the liquid fertilizer facility there in Plant City. And they also have customer base up through the southeast and into Alabama.
That's
So,
amazing.
Yeah,
Yes.
really
So-
neat.
Now, on the citrus side, who are some of the families there that you've interacted with?
Oh gosh. So the Rayleighs.
Oh, yes.
You got to talk about the Rayleighs, and then the Evans and the Griffins. So many of the giants of the citrus industry, and they would come to the mutual board meetings, and we'd sit around the round table in the orange room, and just was like so much knowledge assembled in that one orange room, and just neat.
Well, I mean, there's so many stories, and back then, so many of those people were what I call individualists, that they were just, they were their own men, and you couldn't.
They were
really-
entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you miss a lot of those old timers now. So I really hope to get some stories about some of
The
the people.
legends.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you're talking about Bill Rayleigh. He's the one who got me into this. So,
Yep.
but in terms of some of the stories that you remember about some of the old timers, give us a couple stories you might think of.
Oh, you caught me cold on that.
We all have 1 or 2 in our wheelhouse. I mean, with Bill Rayleigh, he sponsored me in the Florida Citrus Queen contest.
Oh.
And I was so nervous the first time. And the only reason I got in there was because I was Miss Winter Haven in 1978, and they had me fill in for the Citrus Queen. And Bob Eastman was around. He ran the Florida Citrus Showcase at the time, and he and Bill were good friends. So he got Bill to sponsor me, and I was so nervous. I got up there, and when you announced who your sponsor is, I couldn't remember who it was. And Bill was just such a gentleman. He said, "It's okay, honey." And he sponsored me 2 years later.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when I won, and that's how I got into the industry.
Oh, that is great. That is
So,
great.
yes.
So stories. So one of the things that is a challenge for the industry is the fact that some of the materials that are used in production can be misused.
Yes.
And so one of the stories is that shortly after September 11th, 2001, one of our fertilizer companies made a report up to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division and reported that there had been inquiries by a suspicious person prior to September 11th wanting to acquire a crop duster plane for ammonium nitrate applications.
Oh my gosh.
And it did turn out in subsequent years that it was one of the terrorists that was on the planes.
I never heard that
attacked.
story. Oh,
Yeah.
I just got chill bumps. Wow.
Yeah. So just even before that, product safety and security were an emphasis for the association, but it really became probably one of the top things they think about every day.
Well, that would have brought it home for
Yep.
sure after September 11th.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank God they reported it, though.
Yes.
Wow. So, do you have a lot of problems with that on a regular basis?
So, because of the heightened attention to security, we've worked very closely with some of the Department of Homeland Security agents and have worked on some industry initiatives, Be Safe, Be Secure for America. And it boils down to you got to know your customer. You need to have certain red flags if they want to pay in cash. If they try to stay anonymous. If they don't have an agronomic reason for requesting the product that they're asking for. And then also they did other things. They hardened the security at their facilities, put up cameras, increased, depending on the situation,
Right.
Maybe had overnight guards. So great deal of effort went into protecting their facilities, their workers, and their communities.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, because it's something I had never even crossed my mind because
Good.
I think of agriculture. So,
Good.
I think pesticides and agriculture, not for other things. So, but anyways. So, is there anybody else you'd like to mention?
I'm invariably going to forget, so I would like to make sure to mention Mike Roberts, Marshall Frazier, Brent Sutton, Keith Davis. I mean, just some of these people who were just not only board members and bosses, but they became great friends.
Absolutely. Where's Marshall? I haven't seen him.
So Marshall is enjoying retired life.
Aw,
And so, yes.
he's a sweetheart. We miss him. But I know you guys hung around a lot, so you probably have some good stories with him.
So he has promised me that over a beer, whenever his non-disclosure terms are up, he'll be able to talk about some of the work that he had done with the National Guard when he was often at the Pentagon.
Oh my gosh.
And
I want to
so-
be in on that.
Yeah.
I'll buy the beer.
Okay.
Okay, Mary, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brenda.
All right.